Today, I got early access to F1 Manager 23 courtesy of Frontier, and I'm going to be simulating the entire 2023 Formula 1 season in the F1 Manager game. My name is Chris, welcome back to CFRacing, and enjoy the video. Hello everybody, what's going on? Chris here, otherwise known as CFRacing, and today guys, like I said in the intro for today's video, Frontier gave me early access to the deluxe version of F1 Manager, so I got to play it just a little early, which is actually pretty cool, and it gave me a little bit of early time to start simulating the game because that's what I do best. So today, I simulated the whole season. Today I am using AlphaTauri, and halfway through the season I did swap out Nick DeVries with Daniel Ricciardo as he is in the game. There is one thing in here, the first half of this video up until Hungary, I believe there will be cutscenes and everything in this video, and then after I experienced a little bit of a glitch when I swapped Daniel Ricciardo into the team. I don't know if that's just a bug or I did something wrong, but I wasn't able to load up the cutscenes after every race, and I wasn't able to, like, just say for example a driver were to crash, I would have clicked the crash and it would just show me the track map and I wouldn't get any cutscenes. So there's cutscenes up until Hungary, but after that, for the rest of the year, sadly there's no cutscenes. I don't know why that's a thing. I assume it's a glitch, and I'm sure they'll figure it out. But with that being said, enjoy the simulation. And one more thing, if you guys want to join my McLaren merch giveaway, all you gotta do is join the Discord. Link is in the description down below. Join, I believe it's called the McLaren giveaway tab, and hit the enter button. Giveaway ends in like 2 or 1 day. Literally the last day of July is the last day. So with that being said, guys, enjoy the video. Race 1 in Bahrain was won by Max Verstappen, and unfortunately there were no incidents in today's race, but it was still a pretty good one with Perez and Charles Leclerc on the podium, followed by Carlos Sainz, Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton. Gasly finished 9th, K-Mag finished 10th, with Verstappen having the fastest lap and pole position. Race 2 in Saudi Arabia was a good one, and we had a red flag caused by Fernando Alonso mid-Grand Prix, which was amazing. Tough wreck for Alonso, but still a pretty good race. That put Sergio Perez on top with Verstappen P2, Sainz P3, Charles Leclerc P4, followed by Lance Stroll, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Kevin Magnussen, Esteban Ocon, Pierre Gasly. Perez had fastest lap, and Max Verstappen started from pole. Race 3 in Australia was an absolute wreck fest, as we had Kevin Magnussen crashing in Australia, Sergio Perez had a crash, and so did George Russell, along with Yuki Tsunoda. 4 crashes in today's race, absolutely unreal, and that put Charles Leclerc on top with Verstappen P2 and Fernando Alonso P3. Rounding out the top 10, we have Lance Stroll, Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon, Nico Hülkenberg, Lewis Hamilton, Logan Sargent, Lando Norris. Charles Leclerc had fastest lap, and Sergio Perez had pole position. In the Baku sprint, Max Verstappen had the win with Charles Leclerc P2, Carlos Sainz 3rd, Perez 4th, Hamilton 5th, Alonso 6th, Russell 7th, Norris 8th. But let's get into the main race in Baku, where we had 2 red flags. The first red flag, I believe, was caused by Yuki Tsunoda or Nick DeVries. I forget which one it was. Then we had another red flag caused by another AlphaTauri driver. Great job, AlphaTauri driver. You guys are doing great. But after that, Max Verstappen took the win with Charles Leclerc P2, Sergio Perez P3, Fernando Alonso at P4, Lance Stroll P5, Carlos Sainz P6, Hamilton 7th, Russell 8th, Ocon 9th, Hülkenberg in P10, Lance Stroll had fastest lap, and Carlos Sainz started from pole. Race 5 in Miami had a crash with Nick DeVries. That put Perez on top with Carlos Sainz P2 and Alonso P3. Verstappen had his worst race of his life, finishing P4, followed by Lance Stroll, Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Kevin Magnussen, Pierre Gasly 9th, Ocon 10th. Perez had fastest lap, and Charles Leclerc once again did not win from pole, as he had a DNF, I believe, but there was no footage of it for some reason. Race 6 in Imola had a Haas DNF. I believe it was Magnussen, but it could be Hülkenberg, I can't remember, with Sainz coming out on top, winning in Italy, so that's a home win for Ferrari that you absolutely love to see. Perez finished P2 with Verstappen P3, Alonso P4, Stroll 5th, Hamilton 6th, Charles Leclerc a little bit disappointing in 7th, Russell 8th, Ocon 9th, Pierre Gasly 10th, Perez had fastest lap, and Max Verstappen had pole position. Monaco was an absolute snooze fest with no caution flags, no red flags, no yellow flags. It was absolutely boring. Verstappen, Perez, Leclerc podium. Leclerc got a podium though in Monaco. That's epic. Followed by Alonso with Sainz 5th, Russell 6th, Lance Stroll 7th, Esteban Ocon 8th, Hamilton 9th, Magnussen 10th. Leclerc had fastest lap, and Max Verstappen started from pole. Race 8 in Spain was a DNF for Max Verstappen, which is something we don't see very often, honestly. The Max Verstappen DNF caused Sergio Perez to win this race with Sainz P2 and Alonso P3. That is a double Spaniard podium in their home race. You love to see it. Charles Leclerc finishes P4, followed by Lewis Hamilton, Lance Stroll, George Russell, Kevin Magnussen, Nico Hülkenberg, Lando Norris P10, Fernando Alonso had fastest lap, and Lance Stroll had the pole position. Race 9 in Canada was another snooze fest with no yellow or red flags, with Verstappen coming out on top with Charles Leclerc P2, and home hero, he's in good form right now, Lance Stroll finishing P3. Perez finishes 4th, followed by Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon, George Russell, Charles Leclerc, and Fernando Alonso started from pole. The Austrian sprint race was won by Verstappen with Perez P2, Stroll P3, Alonso P4, Carlos Sainz P5, Lewis Hamilton P6, Charles Leclerc P7, and George Russell P8. In Austria, we had a pretty big crash from Zhou Guanyu, but that was about it. Nothing really crazy happened, but Max Verstappen did come out on top with Alonso P2, George Russell P3, Sergio Perez P4, Lance Stroll P5, Charles Leclerc P6, Carlos Sainz P7, Lewis Hamilton P8, Esteban Ocon P9, Gasly P10. Verstappen had fastest lap and pole position. Race 11 in Silverstone was quite boring, as well as there was no yellow flags in this whole race. That absolutely sucks. But Max Verstappen came out on top with Alonso P2, Sergio Perez P3. Sainz finished P4, followed by Lance Stroll, Charles Leclerc, Esteban Ocon, Lewis Hamilton, actually P8 in his home race. That sucks for him. Gasly finished 9th, Albon finished 10th, Lance Stroll had fastest lap, and Max Verstappen won from pole. We finally got some more crashes in this simulation, as in Hungary, Lance Stroll had quite a big incident that caused Max Verstappen to win with Alonso P2 and Sainz P3. Charles Leclerc finished P4, followed by Sergio Perez, Lewis Hamilton, Esteban Ocon, George Russell, Kevin Magnussen P9, Hülkenberg P10. Verstappen had fastest lap and pole position. This was the last race weekend where I was able to get footage of the whole weekend, which is kind of sucks because we're halfway through the season. But in the Spa Sprint, coincidentally where we are this weekend, Max Verstappen finished P1 with Leclerc P2, Sainz P3, Perez P4, Hamilton P5, Alonso P6, George Russell P7, and Lando Norris P8. In the main race in Spa, Yuki Tsunoda had quite a big crash with Zhou Guanyu. That kind of sucks but that really didn't cause anything to happen, really. It was just a little crash. We had Verstappen coming out on top with Sainz P2 and Perez P3. To round out the top 10, we had Charles Leclerc, George Russell, Lance Stroll, Kevin Magnussen, Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon, Lando Norris, Carlos Sainz, and Charles Leclerc had pole, coincidentally, just like he did in real life, but did not win, which is probably going to happen in real life tomorrow. Race 14 in the Netherlands was won by Max Verstappen with Charles Leclerc P2 and Carlos Sainz P3. Sergio Perez finishes P4, followed by Fernando Alonso, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris, Esteban Ocon, Pierre Gasly. Max Verstappen won fastest lap, and Max Verstappen started from first. In Monza, Max Verstappen comes out on top once again with Leclerc P2, Lance Stroll P3, Sergio Perez P4, followed by Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, Pierre Gasly 8th, Esteban Ocon 9th. Pretty good weekend for Alpine. George Russell finished 10th, Leclerc had fastest lap, and Alonso started from pole. Race 16 in Singapore was won by Charles Leclerc, as he loves street races, and Max Verstappen finishes P2. Fernando Alonso finishes P3. This arguably is like my favorite podium ever. Maybe throw 7 instead of Verstappen. You have the greatest podium ever. I love that. But yeah, this is a pretty good podium. Lance Stroll finishes 4th, followed by Gasly 5th, Esteban Ocon, Oscar Piastri, Lewis Hamilton, Logan Sargent, Lando Norris P10. Leclerc had fastest lap, and Perez started from pole but did not get any points. I guess he DNF'd. Race 17 in Japan was won by Max Verstappen with Perez and Leclerc on the podium, followed by Fernando Alonso, Carlos Sainz, Lance Stroll, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Gasly 9th, Magnussen 10th. Verstappen had pole and fastest lap. The Qatar sprint race was won by Verstappen with Leclerc P2, Lando Norris P3, Alonso P4, Carlos Sainz P5, Perez P6, Russell P7, and Hamilton P8. Race 18 in Qatar was won by Charles Leclerc with Verstappen P2, Alonso P3, Lance Stroll P4, Gasly P5, Esteban Ocon P6, Hamilton P7, Hulkenberg P8, Albon P9, Norris P10. Charles Leclerc had fastest lap and Charles Leclerc had pole position. Big weekend for Leclerc right here. The sprint race in Coda was won by Verstappen with Sainz P2, Perez P3, Charles Leclerc P4, Lando Norris P5, Oscar Piastri P6, Alonso P7, and Lance Stroll P8. The main or feature race in Circuit of the Americas was won by Max Verstappen nonetheless, with Sergio Perez P2, Charles Leclerc P3, Fernando Alonso P4, followed by Lance Stroll, Carlos Sainz, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon P10, Verstappen had fastest lap and pole position. In Mexico, Max Verstappen comes out on top once again as he's dominating right now with Charles Leclerc P2 and Lance Stroll back on the podium. You love to see it in P3. Sergio Perez finishes P4, followed by Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon, George Russell P10, Charles Leclerc had fastest lap, and Fernando Alonso had pole position. Race 20. The sprint race in Brazil was won by Max Verstappen with Charles Leclerc P2, Sergio Perez P3, Carlos Sainz P4, Alonso P5, Lando Norris P6, Hamilton P7, and George Russell finished P8. The main race in Brazil was won by Max Verstappen with Sergio Perez P2 and Charles Leclerc P3. Lando Norris finished P4, followed by Oscar Piastri, Carlos Sainz, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Pierre Gasly 9th, Magnussen 10th. Verstappen had pole and fastest lap. The first ever or inaugural Vegas Grand Prix was won by Max Verstappen, no surprise, with Charles Leclerc P2 and Lando Norris on the podium in P3. You love to see it. Oscar Piastri finished P4, so it looks like McLaren's finally got their upgrades going this season, with Alonso P5, Carlos Sainz P6, George Russell P7, Lewis Hamilton P8, Gasly P9, Ocon P10. Max Verstappen had fastest lap and pole position. And in the last race in Abu Dhabi, Max Verstappen comes out on top once again with Charles Leclerc P2 and again Lando Norris P3. Look at this. Where's Sergio Perez? I have no idea. Carlos Sainz finished P4, followed by Fernando Alonso, Oscar Piastri, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Gasly P9, Hulkenberg P10, and Verstappen had pole and fastest lap. Now guys, let's take a look at the final standings for drivers and constructors. Your driver's champion in this simulation is Max Verstappen, and it's not even close. He had 556 points. That's unreal, with Charles Leclerc actually beating Sergio Perez in P2. Seems like Perez fumbled the bag in the last two races in Vegas and Abu Dhabi as he scored no points, and Leclerc scored like 36, so good job, Charles. Not very good job, Perez. Sainz finished P4 with Alonso 5th in the standings. Lance Stroll, 201 points in P6. Unreal. Lewis Hamilton, 7th. Russell, 8th. Lando Norris finished 9th, tied with Gasly with 66 points. But since Lando Norris had a podium and Gasly didn't, Lando Norris gets 9th. Esteban Ocon finished 11th with Piastri 12th. Pretty good rookie season from him. Kevin Magnussen, 13th with Hulkenberg 14th. Logan Sargent actually beat Albon 4-3 in the standings. Good job. We have Daniel Ricciardo in 17th as he finished higher than all the non-point scorers. Bottas 18th, Zhou 19th, Tsunoda 20th, and just for the sake of not squeezing everything into this, I did not put Nick DeVries, though he would have been 21st anyway. And in the constructor standings, it wasn't really close. Thank God Max Verstappen is an absolute god in this, as Red Bull scored 896 points. That's unreal. Ferrari finished P2 with Aston Martin P3, Mercedes P4, Alpine P5, McLaren pretty disappointing, they were P6, Haas pretty good, P7, Williams are P8, AlphaTauri's P9, and Alfa Romeo is in dead last. So guys, that is going to wrap it up for my first ever F1 manager simulation. I wanted to continue this simulation onto other seasons and get cutscenes for all you guys, but since I can't get the cutscenes in the simulation, I am actually going to end this one here at season 1. Hopefully they fix the bug, or I'll talk to the team, see if I can see what's going on with that. I'll tweet them or something, see if that bug is going to get fixed so I can get the cutscenes, because I want to do a simulation, a season where I follow all the driver transfers, follow the F2, F3 standings, so you guys get really engaged into a simulation like this. I think that'll be really cool. But with that being said, let me know what you think about that. I think it'll be really cool. Also, join the Discord once again for the McLaren merch giveaway ending tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, whatever. And with that being said, see you guys next time.